There we go. So, hey, welcome to episode 54 of Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine. I'm Mike Mylan, and that is my fantastic and handsome partner, Blaine Birch. What's up, man?
The bald, gray-haired guy. All right, let's kick it off. I was not a hair model, so I can't say too much.
There's only one of us that can be a hair model on the show, right? And what we're referencing, if you're kind of new, I get made fun of for like probably the rest of my life. I did an infomercial for Hims, but only the hair stuff. I mean, not the other stuff they sell. I'm okay there. It was just the hair that got thin.
Right. I don't know what else they sell. You can tell me offline. It sells like you don't want to share.
I'm sure if you Google it right now, you'll go, oh.
Okay.
He's got that problem.
Okay, I'll Google it right after the show here. See, check that
out. But no, it was only hair. I'm only doing hair stuff. All right. So that's what we're doing. So, hey, by the way, we got that new sponsor coming up, but I'm trying to give Dry Run more and more credit right before we switch to that new sponsor coming up in about 2 weeks. So what about Dry Run? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I guess we've kind of forgot about it for the last little while, but I guess we're the sponsor for a couple more weeks. Dry Run, my company, financial forecasting, cash flow modeling. It's a terrific product, especially if you're a CFO or if you're a CPA helping your clients figure out where they are, where they're going, looking into the future, making better decisions. Come visit us at dryrun.com. And if you happen to be watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel. I always forget to ask, but I think we got another subscriber the other day. And I thought, oh man, maybe mention that. I know most of our stuff comes from downloads through podcast networks, but people are starting to watch us on YouTube too. So I thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, well, that's good stuff. And by the way, go to mikeandblaine.com. You can see it got links right to the YouTube videos. You've got all of the recorded podcasts. You can connect up to all the directories. But did you see the cool new t-shirts I put up?
Two new t-shirts. So Mike designed two new t-shirts. One is Buy Us a Beer, which I think is a terrific shirt at mikeandblaine.com. And the other one is it Just Giver or Just Giving Her? Because there's two tents. I was explaining to Mike about that.
All right. So I went with the Just Giving Her.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing at the time. So that makes perfect sense. So
yeah, right. Because I'm wearing the shirt. I'm just giving her. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just giving her. That's what I'm doing. If you're telling someone, will you just give her? You're saying you should just give her. And when they start to give her, they're giving her. That's sort of two times. There's subtleties.
It sounds like a Princess Bride thing you just did to me.
There's Canadian subtleties in, but no, it's a great shirt. I'm gonna have to get that one actually.
I'm gonna buy that one. I'm gonna buy that one myself. So we'll wear them on the show. We'll just be giving her.
Just give her on the show. All right. So let's give her. That's how it works.
Let's give her now. All right. So what are you drinking, buddy?
Okay. So today I grabbed a beer from, and these cans are always they're so cool, but they're always they're dark and kind of frightening. And it's from Anchorage Brewing Company. This one is called Nothing and Everything. And it's an IPA. And the reason I grabbed it today is because I've had 5 or 6 different IPAs from Anchorage in my fridge this summer, and they're all outstanding. And I haven't featured Anchorage yet. Not close to home, not Canadian here, but I wanted to show them because their beer is terrific. IPAs are outstanding. I don't think I've had one that hasn't been outstanding. So highly recommend Anchorage, especially for their IPAs.
Got it. Well, I'll tell you what, I stumbled across another Austin brewery called Adelbert's Brewery, right? I hadn't heard of them. I just found this, matter of fact, today, right before the show, I found this one. It's a Marzen. So, I'm expecting it to be a little heavier, a little bit, maybe even a little spice to it, mainly because it's called, you see it there? October Rust.
Nice.
October Rust. So I'm expecting a dark, rich color, and since they got October in there, I'm expecting kind of an Oktoberfest spice feel to it. So, but right up the road in Austin. So I'm still in Texas. Every once in a while I find a new one.
Nice. That's good. That's nice to stumble across one like that. We tried, I will mention as well, we tried a brewery in Sherwood Park, Alberta earlier this week, or last weekend actually, called 70 Acre. And so and it was terrific. That a really nice charcuterie board. Their beer was really good. Really a terrific find. So I just wanted to also mention that, because I don't know if they have cans. I don't know if I can get any of their beer. I'll watch for them in the store, but I'm going to do a little mention there because it was such a good experience there.
Yes. All right. So before we get started, do you do like fantasy football, right? It's getting to be that time of year where
drafting Monday night, man. And I've done no prep. So what I'll do is I'll follow just like what the recommendations are from Yahoo and pretend that it's my idea. That's my plan. So I'll make comments to make it sound like I'm like, I'm going to take this guy and just happen to be the next up on the old draft list.
All right. So 13 years in the same league, right? And we got our commissioner publishes a magazine every year. I don't know if you guys can see that. The name of our league is Lawrence Phillips Punch Out League, right? Because he was a former NFL player that, got in trouble for punching people.
Nice.
But here's the thing. This thing is chalk. I mean, look at this. I mean, wow. I don't know if you can see that, but it is page after page after page of draft analysis from last year. He's got it's funny, it's relevant, it's like dumb stuff you do. Like maybe I forgot to start somebody. Like one of the big things that happened in our league was in the playoffs, one of the coaches started a player that was out, right? Started his quarterback. So you're not going to win if your quarterback is sitting on the bench. So stuff like that, they make fun of it. But nice. I can't imagine the time it takes for him to do that. And that, by the way, is our trophy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
sweet.
That's a real player. That's our real trophy. And that's our magazine. He mails it out. He goes and gets it printed and mails it out. So nice. Super cool. All right. So you guys up in St. Louis, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and you guys in my league, you're slacking.
Yeah,
or is it me that's slacking?
Definitely got to step up. I mean, if you're not putting out an annual magazine, I mean, you guys are way behind the times.
Exactly. I'm going to bring that up Monday night.
All right, so check this out. Here's today's topic, and I think it hits home for you and I, right? It's by Seth Godin. It's his quote, and it says that the only thing worse than starting something and failing is never to start something.
Yeah, Seth Godin is really interesting. Just on a side note, he's a really interesting guy. I think he's written some great books, I believe. I don't know if he seems to be everywhere. So he's got a lot of content out there. Really interesting guy. Very insightful comment because, I've failed. Of course, every entrepreneur, we've failed at all kinds of things and business ideas and projects and all sorts of things. And there's not one that I regret, like taking the leap and trying. You walk away and you go, well, I learned from it and learned a ton from it. And what else can you do?
Yeah.
But it would suck not to do anything, right?
Yeah. So let's take it from the top, like going, okay, the only thing worse is to not start something, right? So when I think of that, I'm like going, well, why? Why wouldn't you start something? If you come up with a project and you come up with an idea to start a business and you're kind of inclined to do that, what's stopping you? What stops people from taking action?
I think, this is a bit of a weird sort of viewer opinion, but, like we're talking on the show all the time, but I'm also like, I have another podcast that I do occasionally, and it's that I where I interview other entrepreneurs. And then of course, as an entrepreneur, I'm always out for, coffee or drinks or whatever with other entrepreneurs, and you're learning from them and sharing war stories and all of that. There's something that, it feels like entrepreneurs are kind of hardwired in a different way. When they see something, like when you had these ideas, really, did you ever really stop and think before you dove in? Or are you just going like, once you have this idea, I'm like, well, I'm doing that. And it's like, push everything out of the way. And I think there's some people that they're just not wired that way. And they look for reasons not to do something. They look for they don't want to take a risk. They're so worried about failure. And I think entrepreneurs are wired in a way where you have this innate belief that you're going to be a success, even when sometimes it's really not a good idea at all.
All right, so I bet weekly somebody calls me with an idea or text me. I got a text message today from a friend. By the way, that friend and I failed at a business, about 10 years ago, but he wanted me to evaluate another business for him, right? So I think it's the type of business that he might be good at, right? Because it's really interactive with the public and he's kind of that type of guy. I haven't looked at it from a financial aspect yet, but here's what happens. Every single week I get these, and almost never do I see somebody do it, right? I get people say, well, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of that? What would you do? And me, I'm probably a lot like you. If I'm sitting on the back deck with friends and they come up with a great idea, we'll war game it, like on what could kill this idea. And I do the same thing with my own friends. I'm like, okay, well, what could kill this? What is it already out there? Is it just is it the beer talking? What is it that absolutely could knock this thing down where we shouldn't start?
And like the interesting part is how much beer brings in creativity, but also tends to bring in like it pulls away some of the reality. Like you said, like when you look at these things, one of the final steps is really looking at the finances and figuring out, is it something that could actually make money and be profitable? Do those numbers even line up? Because a lot of times they don't. And that's when the idea, like, if you can't find a way to make the numbers line up, it's a little hard to dive in and hope for the best, right?
Dude, I still think my food truck dispatching idea from a few episodes ago is a winner. Here I am. Yeah. I'm the guy not starting it. So the only thing worse than starting something failing.
Well, are you going to look back a year from now and go, yeah, no, it's on my phone. I should have done that. So
yeah, it's first of all, it doesn't fit, right? So one of the things that I teach in the Clear Path to Cash is the two things that kill what I call a blunder stage company. That's a company that's starting to get success. And one of them is growing broke. And I think we talked about that a lot, which is we're outrunning our operation, which means selling more than I can keep up with. And the invoices aren't being paid fast enough to finance more or growth.
Yeah.
The second one I always talk about is the sideshow venture, right? Mm-hmm. And that is where, and I think we've talked about this before, it's when you start to have success, everyone around you sees it. Right? They know it. They know you go, man, it seems like his business is really doing well. And you get everyone coming up to you and saying, well, if you're good at this, maybe we should do that. Or, oh, I've got a business idea for you and I to partner on. Or, hey, would you want to invest in this type of business with me? That happens a lot, right? Yeah. When you start to see that. What I caution people at, and it happened to me, I lost about $200,000. With the same guy that asked me for advice.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's you get, well, I'll tell you the story. I'll let you respond to that, and because the story's got some breadth to it, some length. So I'll let you respond to what I'm saying about those two things, and then I'll jump back in.
No, like dive into that story. Like I know, and I've heard it before, and honestly, I'm like, that was a pretty good idea. So sometimes things just don't work, even though it seemed seemed really cool, right? But dive into that story first, because not everyone's heard that one, because that's going back into quite a few episodes, I think, when you talked about that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's one of those things where I had a hotel staffing company, and I ran into a cash flow problem. This is where I kind of originated the cash flow Mike nickname, as I was trying to solve a cash flow problem in a service-based business that was based on inventory. So I bought a bar restaurant, right? And then I built a bar restaurant, and then I bought a building with a bar restaurant in it. So now I had this hotel staffing company and 3 bars, which means I had lots of cash coming in every day. But cash flow problem kind of went away. I actually started accumulating cash.
Yeah.
What the issue was is exactly what I was describing. I started to get so many people coming to me with good ideas or decent ideas, and if you look at the way I ran the hotel staffing company, is that I would take the housekeepers out of the hotels and have them clean the apartments that I had, because the building that I bought had a restaurant in it. It also had apartments up top. They would clean the apartments as people moved out. all the restaurants were the same POS, same everything. It was more like a franchise, but they had different themes. But all the processes were the same, right? So, I mean, that way I can move people around and say, okay, hey, we got a bartender shift over at this bar instead of that bar. So I can move people around. So, and then I had a 2-man repair crew for the apartments that also fixed the restaurants, right? So what I had was just a scheduling, process. That's all we did. So if you think about that, how I'm moving people around, do you see where an herbal supplement fits into that?
But it sounds like a high value herbal supplement.
But that's exactly what happened. All right. So if you're from St. Louis, you guys remember all this, but my friend built a Gatorade in a pill, right? Basically what it is. He invented this. I mean, it's like a Gatorade in a pill where he didn't have all the sugar and all the water, but you could take this and it would replenish you like a Gatorade. But what we also found out, it also was good for what we called late night recovery. It was a hangover pill, right? It was a hangover pill. So I started giving it away at the bars and people loved it. I'm like, oh, would you buy it? Oh yeah, I'd buy that. So I'm like, okay, well, I got a box from him and we started selling it over the bar for $1 a pack. Like at the end of the night, you get your bill, you get your recover, take it, no hangover in the next morning. Yeah, I go, man, this is really getting good reviews. I said, but I'm not going to hawk pills door to door like he does. He would put boxes in his truck and drive to every convenience store and try to get people to buy it, right? And put it on the shelf. Well, I ended up being able to get Walgreens to put it on 119 shelves, right? Stores. And when that happens, you end up with a distributor, and the distributor helped us get into another 300 doors. So think about that. We're in like 400 or 500 stores around the Midwest. It was all over all over Missouri and Illinois and down into Arkansas. We were on TV, radio. I mean, you named it. Matter of fact, we made it to the final round of Shark Tank before you go on the show, right? The thing was, I thought it was going to be great. Well, what I didn't understand at the time was this thing called inventory turnover. So in our Walgreens contract, we were required to have 12x turnover. That means they wanted to buy one new box every month, right? And we'll say there's 50 packages, single serve packages in every box. And what I didn't know at the time is that every linear foot in a retail store is assigned a gross profit amount, right? So let's just say they make in gross profit $1 for every package that they sell of recover. That means they want $50 a month out of that foot. That's how they build the store budget, right? You're like, well, how do they come up with budgets and things like that? They say, well, if I sell one box in this foot, I should make $50, and they do that all over the store. They have a different gross profit amount. Well, we made it 90 days what they gave us to get to 12x. That's where the radio and TV. I'm like, oh, seen in Walgreens. Go to Walgreens and get your stuff. You see people saying that, it's because they're trying to meet a contractual agreement. We did it too, but I only got the 9x. If you get the 9x, not 12, you don't meet your contractual agreement and you get fired from Walgreens. When you get fired from Walgreens, the distributor goes, maybe it's not worth it. And he drops you too. And then you're sitting with pallets recovered. You're going to have to go back to hawking door to door. And it just fell apart from there. Because as I was trying to push pills, my other businesses started to decline, right? Because I wasn't paying much attention. My focus was changed. That's why I say it's a sideshow venture. But thinking about Seth Godin's quote, it would have been worse for me not to try it. I learned so much that I now put into my training courses about, hey, don't do that because I did it and it cost me $200,000.
Yeah. Well, and what if it had been 15x? But okay, a couple of things that kind of come to mind here. One is I remember a friend of mine when I was in New York, and this is a lot of years ago when we were younger and sturdier. We were going to a conference in New York, and we were sharing a suite in Manhattan, and he pulled out a Ziploc bag that was one of those like gallon bags. And I remember he pulled it out and went boom, and it just kind of dropped on thunk. And it was full of vitamins and stuff. And it was his entire hangover bag. And I'm like, yeah, that could be replaced with your one pill. So I see the value of that. But it's interesting because this Seth Godin quote, it's interesting, but it's almost like you have to qualify it. And if we go back a few weeks, I can't remember when we did this one, and I can't remember the exact quote, but the quote was basically, don't dive into don't start something in an area that you're not familiar with. You can, I'm sure you remember the quote better than I do, right?
Because I was in Vegas and they said, don't play games you don't understand.
Don't play games you don't understand. So it's almost like, maybe at the end of the season, we'll string all these together in one big long paragraph, because it feels like you'll regret it if you don't start this, but don't play games that you don't understand. And if you're, it's like, we'll do this ultimate paragraph at the end of the season where we'll string all of the quotes together, because you kind of probably have to have all the quotes to understand it, because that is really the kind of issue. Like you'll regret it if you don't try something, but maybe you don't regret it if you go, yeah, but it's not an area I understand. And that is going all the way back to your food truck idea. How many food trucks have you had? Because it feels like you probably will want to have felt it and lived it and done something with a food truck and saw intimately the issues.
No, you're missing what the food truck idea is. It's not me with a food truck. It's me setting up a central spot for people to request and hire other food trucks. I become a directory, kind of a grub hub for food trucks.
Yes, I totally understand that. But I will say that it all makes sense right now. And when you're in the thick of it, you may find out one of those things that, oh, I didn't know that, but people that have a food truck may know something. I don't know what it is. I don't know enough about food trucks outside of buying food from them, but maybe there's something in there that is really fundamental that you would know if you had a food truck that you have to have in this app or you have to have in this service, right?
See, I think you create a directory, and in the directory, they have a landing page, right? Hey, here's all the stuff we can do. The landing page has their menu. And if you want to schedule them, that's where the pricing mechanism comes in for Mike's food truck stuff. It's you connect to a Calendly link and it shows the availability of the food truck. I need you here Saturday at 2. Well, is it even open? Might not even be open that time. So they click on it Saturday at 2, then they make payment immediately for whatever they're buying off the menu, and I get a service fee.
Yeah.
For providing the service, and the service fee comes twofold, right? You pay for your landing page, and then you also get paid from the customer when they hire you.
It sounds like a terrific idea. I'm just circling around to, well, it's one of those things that why hasn't somebody, or maybe someone has done it, but why hasn't somebody made traction with that idea? Maybe there's something that is, that food truck people know that I don't. On a total side note, we got an ice cream from a food truck the other day, and the guy was saying that he actually had someone run up and steal his tip jar. I thought that really? Is such, and the guy was like late 70s ice cream truck. He's there all the time. Someone stole his. I'm like, who would do that? And then I'm like, well, maybe I should break a screw and a drill, and I'm just like screw your tip jar down. Right.
Yeah, why not?
I know, total side note, but I'm like, who does that? Like, what kind of jerk steals a tip jar from a guy like that? But anyway.
That's terrible. All right, so away from the food truck thing, you said something really interesting about running all the titles together. All right, so we did that in a different company where we took our company values, and that's how you remembered the values was, we'll say one of them was simple over complex and nothing is impossible. So when you do that, you just add in a few extra words and you're like, hey, I think one of the other values was, you're going to start with I think that you have good intentions. I'm going to start with good intentions, right? Listening to you, that I think you have the best intentions. So like, hey, we're going to start with good intentions because, nothing's impossible and we want to be able to do things simple over complex. And we just wrapped all the values together into a big, long sentence. And you could just really feel the culture right there, just by doing what you said. But that's one of the ways that we taught the values.
This one feels like that, not making more work from, but I feel like I'd circle in our CTO and say, okay, because it feels like it's going to be a long phrase with a whole bunch of if then else. Right? Like, I'm not a programmer, so I probably can't do it, but do this if this happens, but don't do this, then do that. It's like you got this whole thing as we string them all together in this ultimate programmatic. Maybe it's like, then we plug it into AI and we make a robot so smart that they start building all the businesses and we're all put out of business.
Yeah. What would be interesting is if we just come up with the paragraph and then let somebody that's listening chart it, graph it, but build a diagram of what we're saying, what it's saying. Right? I would love to see that. What does this look? What did we just tell people to do?
Yeah, exactly. And like we got like 100, just so you guys know, we have like 100 quotes in the tank right now. And we've done like 5 or something, 6. So we got lots to go through. All of them have wisdom in the quote, but it's interesting to see when you have a quote like this one, you're going to regret it if you don't start. And then you got 5 other quotes that say, yeah, but be careful because you're going to completely screw it up if you do it the wrong way.
I think what we'll end up doing is proving mathematically that we don't know anything.
Well, that'd be kind of that'd be kind of cool. That'd be a new t-shirt. Program. Here's how we can mathematically tell you we don't know anything. On a shirt.
Nobody told us.
Yeah, it doesn't equal 0. It's like -8 or something.
See, now that's a good idea. That's a great shirt right there. We do that. We graph it out. If they try to do, dotted lines, to, well, this kind of connects to this thing, and then come up with some like equals beer.
Equals beer to drown our sorrows because we're at -8 in our entrepreneurial smartness.
Yeah. All right. So that was a sideshow venture, but I see that all the time. People do that.
Yeah.
Right. With sideshow ventures. The story that comes to mind is a guy that had a very, very successful construction company, and he and his wife enjoyed once a year would go to the San Juan Islands up off the coast of Seattle, Puget Sound, and stay at this bed and breakfast. And they loved it so much that when it came up for sale, they bought it. All right. So think about this. I'm a construction company in Seattle. Then I buy a bed and breakfast an hour plus out of Seattle.
Yeah.
Out on an island, and I don't know anything about that business. I mean, he ended up losing over $1 million in it just because everything he was doing with the construction company was funding this bed and breakfast that they didn't know how to run.
And it, I would hazard a guess that he might have a little bit of regret on that one.
I would think, but you know what? The funny thing is, I was talking to a friend the other day. They gave up. They lost the money. They sold the bed and breakfast. He's now looking at a winery. So wait a second. Some people want just a lifestyle friendly business. They like wine, they like bed and breakfast. It'd be more fun to work there than build something.
Yeah, until you find out that I'm sure that is really hard. Well, you and I would be like, yeah, it'd be awesome to own a brewery, but I have a feeling to be like, ooh, this is a lot harder and a lot more work and a lot riskier than we ever thought, right?
You know why I couldn't do it? I've been in enough breweries now to know that I don't know if it's hops or it's the bar. There's something I don't like the smell of.
One of those,
I don't know if it's hops or barley or whatever. I mean, but there is something in a brewery before it gets to the mash tun that I just don't like the smell of. I'm like, if I got to smell that all day, I'm out.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what it is because I've walked into the odd brewery where they're brewing the beer and they're like, oh, yeah, that's not nice. But yeah, no, like it must turn into something good. I don't know if it's the mash or the whatever, but I think I'd prefer just to enjoy drinking the beer and leave it at that.
Yeah, that's what I figured out. Even after, all right, so when you own a bar, the average lifespan of a bar owner is 3 years of owning it, like being in
really, wow,
yeah. Because you just get burnt out. I mean, it's just constant day after day. I mean, it is different every day, but it's different every day. So there's a new problem that happens every day. I mean, you go from people that, fight, puke, you name it, something is happening. Alarm goes off, you get called out of bed at crazy hours. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
burns you out just dealing with people. And I found out that I'm a lot better on one side of the bar than I am on the other.
Yeah. It's I can't imagine that. Like, it's funny because I think when I was younger, I had like, ideas like they're just coming every, it's like a fire hose of ideas. They all seem good. And it's like, we should do all of them. And my filters have gotten a lot stricter now. And most things like I hear and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't own a bar and I wouldn't regret it. Like I just wouldn't regret it because I don't know anything about it. You focus, like I said, the sideshow thing, focus is important. Like it's okay, here's a kind of a funny little story that just reminds me of focus. So I actually had a VC who called me yesterday, just wanted to do a catch up, the usual. And we're talking, and I apparently showed up dry run apparently showed up in a pitch deck from somebody that considered us a competitor. And he asked me, he said, if we had like some kind of agency or something. Like he was just kind of curious. It's like, are you doing like some kind of marketing or advertising agency? Because this guy says you are. And Dry Run is like a sideshow. I'm like, no, I had like an agency 10 years ago. Like, I don't even know who this person is. Like, I don't know them at all. But apparently it was kind of weird because it seemed like they thought they knew a lot about us. And like, no, you really don't. And then they had listed us as a competitor. And I'm like, if you had taken more than 30 seconds, we're not competing. We're not going for the same market at all. So it was like kind of like weird because I felt like they were creeping on me personally, but not paying attention to the business. And then threw a logo in their pitch deck, which I thought was the whole thing was weird.
Do I know this company?
Probably not. I'll tell you after. I'm not going to listen here, but I'll probably not, to be honest. I'm like, I don't know who these guys are. Like, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay.
It just was weird. It was a weird experience, but I'm like, well, at least we made it in someone's pitch deck. So there we go.
Yeah. I think you were in some of my stuff. Photograph. Right, because I mean we were competitors. I think at the time, now you could differentiate market segments, right? But at the time you were still down low with cashflow tool.
At the time we would have listed, and I'm sure we did list you as competitors. And it's not a bad thing. It's just I wouldn't even say we found the market. The market grabbed us by the scruff of the neck and pulled us over there and went, okay, well, that's what we are. They found us and we went, oh, okay, we didn't have it quite right. And which is terrific because it's a great market for us. But like I'm sure I had cash flow tool on that on probably early pitch decks and stuff too, which is kind of funny. So
yeah, we just hadn't talked. I talked to Jeremy, not you at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the worst mistake. Now, so that's what he says. He says the worst mistake you can make is not starting.
Yeah. Now, what just dawned on me, and this this might be not a fair question, but like I've read a lot of like Seth Godin's stuff. I think I saw him at a conference one time. I think he did a talk and he was really good. Mm-hmm. But now I'm starting to wonder, what has he built to give that advice? So now I'm like, I don't know, maybe he has, maybe I'm like, that might be something worth Googling right now, because are there things that he's like regretted because he hasn't dove into them? But has he also kind of gone through the grinder and failed miserably on stuff too, right?
All right. So he did some .com stuff. Yo-Yo Dine. I don't know what Yo-Yo Dine was.
I have no idea. Maybe it's a precursor to slipped my mind. The little restaurant app that you get.
All right, so yeah, it looks like he's more of an author, more of I think he did a little bit, but yeah, but his company, I mean, he sold that yo-yo dine to Yahoo for 30 million. So
Okay, well, he's got, yeah, he's
we can make fun of yo-yo dine all we want to, that we don't know what it is.
no longer making fun of it. But I will say what's kind of funny is the reason we probably haven't heard of it is because he sold it to Yahoo.
It's probably buried in there, because this was 98 when he sold that. So think of that money in 98. And then in 2006, he launched a company. I've heard of this company called Squidoo.
I have heard of it. I can't for the life of me remember what they do, but I've definitely heard of it. So no, it was reasonable question, but no, like, so he's done, yeah, he's done that. So he must have had some big regrets then, right?
Yeah, well, I think because Squidoo was one of the 500 most visited sites in the world. But by 2014, it wasn't even considered financially viable, and they sold it off to Hub Pages, which I don't even know what that is.
Don't even know.
So what I can say about him is that, I mean, if you build a company that's bought for 30 million, that's not bad. That's
not bad. And that's, I will backtrack really quickly, because I was more familiar with him as an author and everything. And now when you mentioned like Squidoo and stuff, I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of familiar, but I don't know. There's so much stuff.
Not really. I mean, he's known as an author. He's known as, kind of a speaker. Which, I think that's probably, he's good at it. I mean, not only did he sell that company, so he's got the bones, he made his bones, so they speak, but now he can tell stories from experience. I mean, he's fought the battle probably more than you and I have.
Absolutely. And that was the question. That's why I asked that question, right? Because I'm like, geez, maybe I should actually find out if this was where this quote is coming from, because I know him as an author and everything, right? And I've read this stuff, so I probably knew some of this stuff, and I just don't remember, because you read a lot, and I don't remember. My memory's not that great, to be honest. So.
Yeah, that's right. But that was a really enlightening for me. I'm like going, you know what? I should probably look up some backgrounds every once in a while when we talk about people, right? Because them is one thing, and there's something else.
Exactly. Just to give you guys a bit of an idea, this is how much prep we do on this. Mike looks up the quote, and then when we get on about 4 seconds before we hit live, he tells me the quote is, and I go, oh, cool. And then we start chatting about it. So that is the length of our research, is reading the sentence out of a quote that sounds kind of cool. So I'm okay with that.
But that's part of our planned model for the show, is that we want to be able to demonstrate our experience, right? We lived it, right? We can take anything that has to do with a small business and talk about it and relate it back to personal experience. So I like that part of the show.
Yeah. And I will say that there are some limits on there. Like if you bring in a quote that says, I became a bajillionaire because I did, well, yeah, I'm not a jabillionaire, or like Al Bundy, I'm not a jillionaire. So there are probably some limits, but that's not very interesting. The interesting stuff is the battles and the fights to get that next step in success, right?
What was kind of cool, what was it you just said? There's another saying that you say about that. Say that again.
I don't know what I don't know what I said. I got an empty glass here, Riley. Go like, I don't know what I was talking about.
You just said something, but it's like, creativity. You talked about limitations. That's where it came back. A couple of episodes ago, you said that, some of the best creativity comes from when you put limitations on people, right? You can't go left and right. And it kind of spurs creativity more so than just having a free world where you're like, hey, we can do anything, just open up the world or whatever. You start putting guide wires and limitations on people's ideas, and it gets better, because then you're applying reality to it. When we're sitting on the back deck drinking beer and talking about a business, there's no reality applied to it. But all of a sudden you say, well, can we do this? In real life, here are some things that might make it harder. What do we do? Those limitations actually enhance creativity.
Yeah, because when you're problem solving, you have to have a problem to solve, right? And when it's this big picture and it's all good and it's all great, there isn't a whole lot of creativity. It's just kind of throwing stuff out and piling on top of each other. But as soon as you start getting those constraints on, you have to be creative. You have to be creative to survive and to grow and to expand and everything. Those barriers are a good thing, because that's, it's like Jeremy, who works for me, like, who always says, he said, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Right. Like, it's, you have to be creative and you have to figure these things out and you have to tap into your team to figure this stuff out. Right.
You know, what's funny is I heard Zuckerberg the other day say something. And I'm sorry, I'm not friends with him. I can't call him Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg, Mr. Zuckerberg. But he said something. He goes, hey, we just wanted to connect with folks right there on campus. And I wrote this quick little code we called the Facebook, and I went out for pizza. He goes, I didn't think it was going to be me. I always knew that someday we would be able to connect with people, be social across states, continents, whatever. He goes, but I never thought it was going to be me. He goes, I thought it'd be Microsoft or Apple or somebody like this that would take that idea and just run with it.
Yeah.
And the farther I got along, nobody stepped in the way, and all of a sudden it was me. That was the guy, right? So it's what he was saying is that he was the accidental, billionaire at the time. It just kind of like when I just kept going with it because, we had it to the point where it was only, if you remember, it was only .edu email addresses. You had to have a school email addresses. And he said what happened was that people would graduate from college, but they would still come back to the Facebook and still interact with people, even though they weren't in school. And some schools let you keep the, like Texas A&M, where Courtney went, lets you keep the email address for 3, 4, 5 years afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. So he goes, once we found out that people weren't just dropping it as soon as they graduated, we decided to open it up and see what happened.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. He goes, and everybody told me we couldn't monetize it. No way you're gonna be able to make money with it.
And that's what I find so amazing. And listening to other entrepreneurs and like I always listen to that. I'm going to plug him because I really love this Guy Raz with How I Built This. I love that podcast. It's a great podcast, but I always find it interesting because he has these billionaire, companies, founders that have built these really interesting things. And it's so amazing to hear the struggles and how close they came to, failing. But then these interesting things where they saw a little crack of light and went, well, let's try this. Let's try that. And suddenly it just sort of tips over and goes. And I think that's so interesting that Zuckerberg, I think people outside would see that story and just think, well, he took this idea and he knew he was going to be a billionaire. He's going to, no, it's just step by step. There's a little opportunity there. There's a little opportunity there. What if we do this? And also like, oh, wow, that worked. That's amazing to me. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a crazy way that happens, right? It never happens to me. And it probably didn't happen to him either, right? It started in like 2003, 2004. He didn't open it up to the public until 2007. So just like we talked about in the past was the 10-year overnight success.
Yeah. That's
kind of the story of Facebook, even though it doesn't feel like it.
That's that's shocking to me. But it's so interesting because it's, I'm trying to think of when I made my first Facebook page. It was probably like 2006 or 7 or something. Like, I remember when I made my first Facebook page, nobody else that I knew was on. And so it just sat there. It sat there for like a year or two because I'm like, oh, this kind of sucks. There's nobody on. I didn't even get it because nobody I knew was on it. And that was the whole point of how can you be a social network? We don't know anyone on it, right? But it changed.
So I got a funny story about MySpace. Everybody at the bar says, oh, you got to have a bar MySpace page. I'm like, well, in order to get one, you kind of got to give your personal one too, or something like that. I think is how it went.
Yeah.
So I set one up. I didn't have any friends. I didn't, nothing like that. I get this message out of the blue. saying, hey, how do you pronounce your last name? Right. And so it's Mylan, like this land is your land, this land is
Milo.
Mylan.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Right. And that's how people remember my name. He goes, oh my God, me too. His name was Mike Mylan. My name was Mike Mylan. So,
Yeah.
and normally people say Milan or Milan or Millen, and my kids like going all their life, their names have been mispronounced. Right? It's just part of it. I grew up with that too, you know. So like that was 2008, 7, 8, whatever. I sold the biggest part of my company, the hotel staffing company, and as a reward to myself, I built a motorcycle, or had it built. I had it built by a company in Philadelphia. So on MySpace, I said, hey, I'm going to be in Philadelphia. He lived in Baltimore. You want to meet? You want to grab a beer or something? Because we'd become kind of friends on MySpace. And he drove over the hour, right? And we had a beer. We had the greatest night ever, right? We would go to bars, and our big line would be, I'd go up to somebody and go, hi, I'm Mike Mylan. Then like 2 seconds later, he'd go, hi, I'm Mike Mylan. And then people make us prove it with our licenses, you know, that type of stuff. It was just a fun night, right? Because we just played, like, you know, he'd come up with jokes like 2 Mike Mylans walk into a bar. You know? I mean, it was just the greatest thing ever. It was fun. So I go home and start telling people this story. And remember, this is kind of the height of, you know, like internet scams and stuff like that. They're like, you know, you're not supposed to go meet people off the internet. You know, like I have young daughters, and I'm telling them the story. I'm like, oh, wait a second, but you guys can't do that. Right? Don't be meeting dudes on the internet.
Do as I say.
Flying across the country and meeting dudes. Don't be doing that.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Nice.
So yeah, that was my MySpace. And then I don't know how I got on the Facebook. I think it was like a friend invited me, and they say, hey, half of our high school class is there. And that's really what I've used it for mostly, is connecting with folks that I just don't live around anymore, and just kind of keeping up with their lives. I think because we're nosy, right? I think all of us are a little bit nosy.
I will make just the worst admission here. My primary use of Facebook is I follow all these like breweries and craft beer stores. And it's gotten to the point where like I pop onto Facebook, and what it is I can see the new releases. And it's become my beer flow. So I'm like, those guys got such and such in, and I hop in the car and race across town to buy some weird, you know, barrel-aged stout from blah blah blah. And it's because it's so funny because people always complain about all the professional stuff and all the business stuff that went onto Facebook, and I've actually flipped where my main use of Facebook is to kind of see what my little shops are doing on Facebook. It's weird because that's kind of why I go on.
All right, so do you have any friends at homebrew?
I had friends that have homebrewed in the past, but I think they've all sort of given it up and are, because I don't think they could probably make the beer as good as they wanted to compared to what they can buy. So I've had a few that have.
Yeah, so 2 doors up from me is a guy that like every month he'll make a batch, right? Yeah. So what's kind of cool is that we'll be throwing bags or throwing cornhole, and he'll just bring a picture of his homebrew down. And whatever it is, and he's done some good stuff, you know, some amber ales, brown ales. He's done some flavored things, you know, even a sour. I mean, so he's actually not bad.
Nice.
Yeah.
The very first time I had a homebrew, and this is way before craft beer. I remember I was in my undergrad in university. I think it was my undergrad, and I ended up at a party in an apartment downtown Edmonton. I don't remember like who it was, how it was connected or anything. All I know is an Italian guy, like I think it's from Italy, but he was probably doing his graduate studies at U of A. Came in with a Tupperware juice container with his homebrew. And as far as I remember, it was kind of like brown tomato juice. It was not what you'd expect for beer, but that's what it felt like at the time. Was this is kind of like brown tomato juice, like super thick and pulpy, and brown. I don't remember what it tasted like, but that was my first experience with the homebrew.
Yeah, you're always a little scared, right?
Yeah, I'm not looking back. I'm not sure that was probably the best bet to drink it, but anyway, you're kind of fearless at that age.
Hey, what'd you learn today? Anything?
Always learn something. Always. But the funny thing is, we took this quote that we started out, and I said, that's such an amazing quote. And by the end of it, I just kind of said, let's qualify that quote with a whole bunch of things that say, you'll regret it, but man, you're going to set yourself up for failure if you don't follow all of these other things that we talk about all the time, right?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you're like going, we're saying, because you don't want to give the advice says you have to start everything, right? The worst mistake is to not. That's why I kind of lean into that. I'm like going, is it really the worst mistake not to start something? So I don't know that I agree with that. But he says something, not anything, right? Which means any idea you have doesn't mean you have to start it.
It's you still have to find the best idea and all of the other things that line up. But I think the wisdom in it is when you kind of, you've vetted it and you said, this is a really good idea. And it's made it through all of the tests. Like, this is a great, the beer is making the words just zip out of my head. But if you've made it through all of the prereqs and you say, this is a really good idea and it looks like it can make money and I've done my homework and I understand the area and all these things, and you don't do it because you're scared, that's where I think you have the regret, right?
Exactly right. The fear of failure is the one thing you shouldn't have, because you're going to fail. Yeah. You're going to fail at something at some time. You just are. Right. Yeah. But what Edison say, I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways to do it differently.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, you're going to fail a million times along the way. The only one that really matters is the one that's fatal, right? Like that kills the business. Outside of that, so many of them you just learn from. It's just part of the experience, right?
Yeah. Hey man, I got to tell you, you were just giving her today.
Just giving her. I felt like I was starting to slow down and get more repetitive by the end. I don't know how heavy this one is, but
I didn't even look at that, right? I didn't even look at that. Hey, by the way, that is a real deal. I mean, we drink some heavy beers, and sometimes you can tell by the end of this. I mean, you'll get a little slur, you'll get a little repetition, you'll get a little delay.
Yeah, and it's usually when we get into the 10-12%ers that I try and avoid those, but I'm starting to run out of breweries. That's the tricky part. So,
good. All right. So go to mikeandblaine.com and get our new shirt called Just Give Her, right? I want to see those everywhere. Hey, I thought about another one. Maybe, it's like, what'd you learn today? Maybe that's one that we did.
What'd you learn today?
Mike and Blaine.
I like that.
There you go.
I also like the buy us a beer one. That's a great shirt.
Yeah. Buy us a beer, right? Because that kind of slowed down. I don't know what happened to you guys out there. I mean, neighbors, friends, people listen to this podcast. Dig deep, look into your heart. I feel like Jerry Lewis now, right? On a telethon, like, buy us a beer.
What I can't believe is there's no breweries that have bought us a beer yet. It's been people at breweries like, man, we're featuring all these beers and we're talking about them. Just buy us a beer, we'll feature it.
All right, you know what we should do? All right, and season 3. Let's do this on season 3. We'll do a month-long focus on a brewery, which means every episode that month, we have to drink from the same brewery. What do you think of that?
That's a good idea. But, before we do that, let's email or, all these breweries and say, we're going to do a featured beer for a month.
Yeah.
And we can feature your brewery. Just send us 4 beer.
Hey,
4 different ones.
Yeah, you only got 12 chances, right? You got 12, yep. I got 12. So 24 different breweries are going to be featured next year.
Yeah.
Not 100.
That's a fun idea. And it makes it a little bit easier than going through the fridge going, yes, I've done that. No, I haven't. Yes, I've done that.
What made me think of that is if you go to the featured brewery page on our website, it's like 700 feet long now.
Yeah.
Right. And what we're talking about is I take every logo from every brewery we've ever featured and link back to their site. So if you're like, oh, well, episode 53, he did this or that, or maybe you want to know more about October Rust, just go to our website, find Adelbert's Brewery, click on it. It'll take you right to their site and you'll learn more about their beer and where it's sold.
Yeah, nice. That's a good plan. See, we're evolving.
Nobody
told me we'd evolve in this podcast.
See, now we need an episode about evolution of the small business.
There's probably a quote in there because I think we have 95 more quotes that we've gathered. So there's got to be something in there.
Another good one in the books, man. We are in our 50s. We are winding down. I mean, to the back half of season 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's been really good, getting better every single day, and I'm glad I'm your partner.
And the cool thing is we're coming into the fall, and I always feel like I love the summer. It's nice and relaxed. It's hot out and everything, but then the fall hits and it's energy and it's a sprint right through to the end of the year. And I'm excited about that. And so we're going to have some really fun, really good topics. And I think we're going to have a lot of people checking us out because everybody's going to be back and ready to go and ready to roll. So that's kind of fun.
Plus the new sponsor that's coming up.
New sponsor.
And it's just in time for Christmas. You're going to love what they got to offer.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks and we're going to announce it. So that's going to be super fun. All right. Well, 54 in the bag.
There you go. Just giving her.
All right. See you, man. Next week. See you, man.